Welcome to Max Premieres. If you're a sci-fi fan, Prime Video has a catalog that's absolutely worth exploring. Today we're going through the 19 best series of the genre available on the platform. Dystopias that will make you think, mysteries you won't be able to put down, time travel stories that will bend your mind, and space adventures that will leave you speechless. There are unjustly canceled series, hidden gems, and absolute masterpieces. But before we start the video, it would mean a lot to me if you took a moment to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for your support. Number 19. Solos. What does it really mean to be completely alone? That's exactly what this 7-episode anthology series explores, where each chapter follows a single character facing deeply human dilemmas through science fiction scenarios. A physicist obsessed with time travel, a woman stranded in space reviewing her entire life, a mother discovering something disturbing about her newborn, a war veteran dealing with an artificial intelligence that knows all his secrets. The cast is extraordinary. Anne Hathaway, Helen Mirren, Morgan Freeman, Anthony Mackie, Dan Stevens. Names you don't see together every day. The problem is that the series bets everything on acting talent and almost nothing on narrative structure. Each episode is basically a 30-minute monologue with a twist at the end, and while some episodes genuinely shine, the overall result feels uneven and inconsistent. Compared to what Black Mirror achieves with similar premises, Solos falls short of its potential. Some chapters are genuinely moving, others feel empty despite the talent on screen. If you're looking for an easy entry point into the genre with memorable performances, it works fine. But if you want something that grips you from start to finish, there are better options on this very list. Number 18. The Power. Imagine that overnight, teenage girls all over the world develop the ability to generate electric shocks with their hands, and that power can be transferred to adult women. Within weeks, the global balance of power starts shifting in ways nobody anticipated. Destabilized governments, upended gender dynamics, and a world that doesn't know whether it's facing an evolution or the beginning of a war. That's the premise of this series, based on Naomi Alderman's award-winning novel, with Toni Collette leading a strong multinational cast. The idea is genuinely fascinating, and the early episodes have powerful moments showing how that change affects women in completely different contexts around the planet. The problem is that the series never quite decides what it wants to be. It has the potential to be a devastating and thoughtful political thriller, but it constantly gets distracted by subplots that don't lead anywhere satisfying. By the time it finds the rhythm it needs, it's already over, and the cancellation meant there was no real closure either. A massive shame, because the premise deserved a far bolder and more committed execution than what it ultimately delivered. Number 17. Citadel, Diana. This Italian spin-off of the Citadel franchise takes us to Milan in the year 2030, where Diana Cavalieri is an intelligence agent working in the shadows to dismantle a criminal network threatening to destabilize all of Europe. Matilda De Angelis leads the series with real energy and charisma, and the production is visually solid considering it's a regional spin-off of a global franchise. The Italian locations give it a visual personality that the main series never had. The problem is that Citadel, Diana inherits all the narrative flaws of the original series without improving or surpassing them. The spy plot feels generic in too many moments, the twists are predictable if you've watched enough series in the genre, and the connection to the broader Citadel universe feels forced rather than enriching. Interestingly, not having seen the main series doesn't really matter much to follow this story, which says a lot about how dispensable it ultimately is within the franchise. It was canceled after its first season with no satisfying closure. Entertaining enough as background noise on a Friday night, but nothing you'll remember the following week. Number 16. Paper Girls. The morning after Halloween of 1988, 4 girls who deliver newspapers by bicycle are accidentally swept into a conflict between time travelers that has been unfolding in secret for decades. Suddenly, they find themselves jumping between decades, coming face to face with adult versions of themselves, and discovering that the future of humanity might depend on decisions they haven't made yet. Based on Brian K. Vaughan's acclaimed comic book series, Paper Girls has all the ingredients to be a generational show: well-used 80s, nostalgia, teenage characters with real depth, and a genuinely original time travel mythology that doesn't resemble anything you've already seen. The problem wasn't quality. The problem was timing. It premiered exactly when Prime Video concentrated its entire marketing budget on the Rings of Power, and almost nobody saw it. It was canceled just 1 month after its premiere without the platform giving it any real chance. It's one of the most painful and unjust cancellations in the platform's history. A series that deserves a far bigger audience than it ever got. Number 14, Citadel. Citadel was the most powerful independent spy agency in the world, operating in the shadows to maintain a fragile but functional global balance until it was destroyed from within by an organization called Manticore. Now Mason Kane, an agent who survived but lost all his memories, and Nadia Sin, his former partner who remembers everything perfectly, are the only ones capable of stopping Manticore before it uses the stolen secrets of every government on the planet to seize absolute control. Richard Madden and Priyanka Chopra Jonas star in this series produced by the Russo brothers with a budget exceeding $200 million. And yes, it shows on screen. The action sequences are spectacular, and the technical production has nothing to envy from a Hollywood film. The problem is that all that money didn't translate into a particularly original story or characters you genuinely care about. It's entertaining and has energy, but given the budget it had, the disappointment is proportional to the expectation. Season 2 is confirmed and has the opportunity to improve on what the first left unfinished. Number 13, Orphan Black, Echoes. In a near future where science has developed the technology to build fully functional adults from artificially implanted memories, a woman named Lucy wakes up not knowing who she is, where she came from, or what purpose her existence serves. What she discovers while trying to find answers will lead her to question everything: what it means to be human, what truly builds identity, and how far scientific and corporate manipulation can go when there are no ethical limits to stop it. Kristen Ritter leads this spin-off of the acclaimed Orphan Black with a distinct energy and intensity that clearly differentiates her approach from Tatiana Maslany's work in the original. The premise is solid, the early episodes raise genuinely unsettling questions, and the direction has some visually careful moments throughout. The unavoidable problem is that it lives in the enormous shadow of its predecessor, and that comparison does it no favors at any point. The original Orphan Black was an unrepeatable phenomenon. Echoes is competent and has moments that work, but it never quite takes off into something truly memorable. It was canceled after its first season without any real resolution. Number 12, The Handmaid's Tale. The United States has fallen. In its place stands Gilead, a totalitarian theocracy where fertile women are turned into reproductive slaves serving the ruling elite. June Osborne was separated from her daughter and husband the night they tried to cross the border. Now she lives in a commander's household under a name that isn't hers, Offred, waiting for the moment she can fight back. Elizabeth Moss delivers one of the most powerful and sustained performances in recent television history in this adaptation of Margaret Atwood's novel. The first 2 seasons are absolutely devastating, urgent, necessary, and impossible to forget. The problem is that the series ran longer than its story could sustain at that same intensity. By the 4th and 5th seasons, the narrative had begun going in circles, and audiences were starting to feel the exhaustion. The 6th and final season arrived in 2025 and closed June's story. It's an important series that deserves to be watched, with the honest warning that the final stretch doesn't live up to that extraordinary beginning. Number 11, Outer Range. Royal Abbott is a Wyoming rancher who one day discovers a dark, unfathomable hole in the back pasture of his property. He doesn't know what it is, doesn't know where it came from, doesn't understand what it means, but he knows with certainty that if anyone else finds it, everything he's spent decades building disappears in an instant. Josh Brolin carries the series entirely on his shoulders with a magnetic and imposing screen presence that holds even the slowest moments together, and the blend of arid rural western with unexplainable supernatural mystery works far better than it sounds when you describe it out loud. The first season is hypnotic, unsettling, and builds a unique atmosphere that very few series manage to achieve. The second expands the mystery in interesting ways, but also begins losing the thread of what made the first so special. It was canceled in July of 2024 without resolving any of the central questions it raised from its very first episode, which is an enormous frustration for everyone who got hooked on its particular world. Another victim of the platform's impulsive cancellations. Worth watching, as long as you know going in that there will be no closure. Number 10. Star Trek: Picard. Jean-Luc Picard is well over 90 years old and living in retirement at his vineyard in the French countryside when a mysterious young woman shows up at his door one night and drags him back into a universe he believed he had left behind for good. Patrick Stewart returns to the most beloved character of his career in a series that had a very uneven journey across its 3 seasons, but ultimately ended in a genuinely memorable way. The first 2 seasons deeply divided franchise fans, too far removed from the classic optimistic spirit of Star Trek for some, refreshingly modern and dark for others. But the 3rd season reunited the entire cast of The Next Generation for the first time in decades, and delivered the emotional closure that generation of fans had been waiting for without even knowing they needed it. Genuinely moving moments, reunions that will leave a lump in your throat, and a dignified farewell for characters who were part of the childhood and teenage years of millions of people around the world. If you're a franchise fan, seasons 1 and 2 are optional. The 3rd is completely mandatory. Number 9. The Rig. An oil rig in the North Sea becomes completely cut off from the world when a dense, inexplicable fog surrounds it without warning. Communications go dead instantly, rescue helicopters can't get close, and the workers start experiencing phenomena that none of them can explain using any rational framework they know. Ian Glenn and Martin Compston lead a cast that does solid work, building genuine tension inside a closed, deeply claustrophobic space where any room can become a trap. The Rig works first as a tense and atmospheric survival thriller, then gradually opens up into something far larger connected to the planet itself, to oil, and to the accumulated consequences of decades of unchecked extraction. The 2nd season expands the mystery in a satisfying way and raises the stakes in directions the 1st season only hinted at. It's one of those British series that doesn't make a lot of media noise, but that, given a real chance, grabs you completely and doesn't let go. Atmospheric, intelligent, and with an ecological heart that gives it a genuinely interesting extra dimension. Number 8. Upload. In the year 2033, when you die, you can choose to upload your consciousness to a digital paradise. If you have real money, you go to Lakeview, a luxury virtual resort with every comfort you can imagine. If you don't have enough, you end up trapped in some cheap server with low-resolution pixels and internet speed from the year 2000. Nathan dies prematurely in an accident that may not have been as accidental as it seems, and ends up in Lakeview under the financial and emotional control of his wealthy girlfriend, while gradually falling for Nora, the customer service employee who looks after him from the real world. Greg Daniels, the creator of The Office and Parks and Recreation, built a comedy that uses science fiction as a vehicle for sharp social satire about capitalism, death, social class, and love in the age of soulless corporations. It's light, funny, and considerably smarter than it appears at first glance. 4 seasons that wrapped up the story in August of 2025 with a 4-part finale. It doesn't reinvent television, but it delivers exactly what it promises with a lot of heart and genuine humor. Number 7. The Wheel of Time. In a world where time exists as an eternal cycle that repeats without end and evil returns every age in a new form, Moiraine, a powerful sorceress played by Rosamund Pike with cold, magnetic elegance, arrives at a remote village searching for someone who might be the Dragon Reborn, the person destined by prophecy to save the world or destroy it permanently. Based on Robert Jordan's monumental 14-book saga, The Wheel of Time was Prime Video's big bet to have its own answer to Game of Thrones, and it succeeded partially but genuinely. The 1st season had pacing problems and visible budget limitations that showed on screen. The 2nd improved considerably in every aspect and began building a world that was truly worth exploring in depth. The 3rd, released in 2024, showed the series operating at its best level, and that was precisely when the cancellation arrived in May of 2025. With 14 books as source material and a story that had barely scratched the surface, it stands as one of the most incomprehensible decisions the platform has ever made. Number 6. The Man in the High Castle. What if the Nazis and the Japanese Empire had won World War II? In this adaptation of Philip K. Dick's novel, the United States is divided into 2 occupation zones, the East Coast under the absolute control of the Greater Nazi Reich, the West Coast under the Japanese Pacific Empire, and a neutral strip in the Rocky Mountains where something extraordinary circulates in secret and contraband. Films showing an alternate world where the Allies actually won the war. Rufus Sewell as Obergruppenführer John Smith is one of the most complex and disturbing antagonists in recent television, an American who chose the side of evil and carries that weight in devastatingly human and believable ways. The series builds its alternate world with a level of historical and ideological detail that is genuinely impressive throughout. The first 2 seasons are excellent in almost every respect. The final 2 drop slightly in quality but maintain the dignity of the overall project. The ending divided opinions, but the whole remains one of the most intelligent and ambitious dystopias ever produced for television. Number 5. The Lazarus Project. There exists a secret organization with the ability to reset time back to the nearest January 1st whenever the world is on the verge of an apocalyptic-level catastrophe. George, a young British man who suddenly discovers he has the same ability, is forcibly recruited without anyone asking whether he wants to be. What at first seems like an extraordinary responsibility quickly turns into a nightmare when George decides to use that power for his own personal ends, unleashing consequences that no reset can easily fix because the problem isn't in the timeline, it's in him. Papa Esidu carries the series with extraordinary intensity and vulnerability, and the way the writers construct and play with the internal rules of time travel is genuinely clever without ever becoming confusing. Each season finds completely new ways to complicate the central premise without anything feeling artificial or forced. It was canceled after 2 solid seasons, which is deeply painful because it had so much more left to explore. One of the smartest and most underrated science fiction thrillers of recent years on any platform. Number 4. The Devil's Hour. Every night at 3:33 in the morning, Lucy Chambers wakes up. No apparent reason, no nightmares, no external stimulus to explain it. She simply opens her eyes at that exact hour that for centuries has been called the Devil's Hour. Her 9-year-old son is emotionally distant in ways that terrify her and that no doctor can satisfactorily explain. And there's a man named Gideon, wanted by police in connection with a series of seemingly random crimes in different parts of the country, who appears to be connected to Lucy's life in ways that completely defy any conventional logic. Jessica Raine and Peter Capaldi star in this series, created by Tom Moran and produced by Stephen Moffat, that in its early episodes looks like a fairly conventional dark psychological thriller, but that gradually reveals a narrative architecture about time, free will, and sacrifice that very few series have the courage and technical skill to build in quite that way. The second season deepens everything established with remarkable craft. The third is confirmed and is among the most anticipated. Without a doubt, the most underrated series on this entire list. Number 3. Fallout. 200 years after the world ended in nuclear fire, survivors are divided between those who lived underground in subterranean vaults designed by the Vault-Tec Corporation, and those who survived however they could on the surface, turned into a brutal and merciless post-apocalyptic wasteland. Lucy McLean is a young woman raised inside a vault with the values and naivety of 1950s America, who has never seen the world above ground, and who one day has to venture into that chaos to rescue her kidnapped father. What she finds up there will change absolutely everything she believes she knows about her world, her history, and who she herself really is. Ella Purnell is absolutely perfect in the role, and alongside her, the series achieves something that seemed nearly impossible: capturing the spirit and dark humor of the video games without alienating viewers who have never played them at all. It's violent, funny, philosophically more interesting than it appears at first glance, and visually spectacular in every episode. The first season was a complete revelation. The second, released in late 2025, confirmed it wasn't just luck. A third season is already confirmed. Number 2. The Peripheral. In a near-future rural American South, Flynn Fisher and her brother survive however they can in a devastated local economy. When he brings home a virtual reality headset of unknown origin, Flynn uses it thinking it's a video game, but what she experiences isn't a simulation. It's a real and fully functional connection with 22nd century London, a city that survived a catastrophic event called the Jackpot that wiped out the vast majority of humanity. and the inhabitants of that distant future need something specific from Flynn that could alter the course of both timelines in ways that neither end can fully predict. Chloe Grace Moretz leads this series, produced by Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, the creators of Westworld, with a narrative complexity that demands full attention in every scene and rewards you generously every time you give it. The way it manages two simultaneous eras without losing clarity or coherence is a genuine feat of television writing. It was canceled in August of 2023, despite having already been renewed, a direct victim of production costs and the Hollywood strikes. One of the most painful and unjustified cancellations in recent streaming history. Number 1. The Expanse. 200 years in the future, humanity has colonized the entire solar system but hasn't solved any of its fundamental problems. Earth is governed by the United Nations amid mass overpopulation and unemployment. Mars is an independent military power, with its own culture forged in the harshness of terraforming a hostile planet. And the Belters, who live and work in the asteroid belt extracting the resources both superpowers need, survive under brutal conditions while being exploited and looked down upon by both sides. When a young activist disappears and an ice hauler is mysteriously destroyed in deep space, a belt detective and a merchant ship officer discover that both cases point toward the greatest conspiracy in the history of humanity, something found in space that could change absolutely everything. The Expanse isn't just the best science fiction series on Prime Video. For an entire generation of genre fans, it's the best science fiction series produced in the last 20 years. The physics is real and consistent, the politics are complex and credible, and the characters carry a human depth that very few series of any genre manage to sustain across 6 complete seasons. It was canceled by Sci-Fi after 3 seasons and rescued by Amazon thanks to the massive and organized pressure of its fans. A universe built with a narrative coherence and ambition that has no equal in television today. And that's it for today's video. I hope you found your next favorite series and feel inspired to give one of these incredible stories a chance. If you think we missed any, drop them in the comments so we can include them in future videos. Thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next premiere.